So I hear we have some unfinished business from last week, Alex.
We do. I thought of some important things that I wanted to add to last week that might be relevant and certainly be eye-opening for people that weren't around then. I talked a little bit about the poster artists. These guys were really phenomenally interesting guys, and they were all very artistic. They had training, and they also trained themselves, and they created an alphabet that was important that began to be seen in all of the handbills and all of the posters from Bill Graham and from Chet Helms, the family dog, Fillmore West, Avalon Ballroom. And these guys really made the movement very efficient and successful because people would collect the handbills that would come to your house. They were this size, and then the corresponding poster you would purchase or would be given one, sometimes by Bill Graham himself or by me handing it to people. And they would find their way into the Haight-Ashbury and into North Beach, to the print shop in Berkeley. And so now many of them are very expensive. Your average price might be $300 for one poster.
Or by me handing them to people.
Oh, in other words, people who were taking tickets to enter the dance hall in the evenings, performers would get one. Gratis. Hey, thank you for attending Elizabeth. Here's your poster of the Grateful Dead. So I have, as I say, some of these, there are books that showcase the entire collection, but that's where I got some semblance of psychedelic kind of art. And the psychedelic alphabet that you have to look at and study carefully because it's not easily readable.
Right, but it's almost like its own font.
Exactly.
So it's like I think what you're saying is like the branding of that whole movement. This was critical to it having this consistent look, because for all the crazy things that were going on, you had this look and feel to it that was coherent and consistent.
And that established a movement.
Right.
Because that had not happened before like that. So it was world shattering to have these posters floating around Europe and South America and people would hunt them out. Their favorite bands they'd have to have. Oh, I went to that show. I want a poster to commemorate my being. My girlfriend and I met at that event.
Right.
So that's important.
Cool.
The other thing is Robert Crumb, the great artist Robert Crumb, cartoonist. Started to draw people that he would meet in the Haight-Ashbury Symphony Cafe, and those drawings eventually worked their way into comic books. And so the hippie comic books are another huge collectible, and I have several of those. They're important. For example, they would introduce characters like Mr. Natural. Mr. Natural was an older guy with a beard who would be trucking along down the street, and we would say, "Hey, keep on trucking." And so Mr. Natural was the guy who did that. And then he would meet a character who would be Mr. Abnormal. Abnormal would talk to Mr. Natural. So they would have these great discussions. We also introduced the Freak Brothers. Another cartoonist got into the Freak Brothers, and these were guys who were always stoned, like Cheech and Chong, and they would have adventures based upon being totally ripped. And so those comics, again, they exist. They're few and far between. They're highly collectible. And Robert Crumb stuff, anything by Robert Crumb. He eventually moved to France. I believe he's still there. He would be probably in his middle 70s, approximately. Mount Tam was the place where concerts would happen in the summer months. So people would trek up to Mount Tam, camp out, and there would be enclaves of hippies all the way up the trail with flowers in their hair and smoking joints and dancing. And there was this celebratory kind of festive feeling of the weekend. You got to the amphitheater in with Mount Tam, and there would be Grace Slick, Jefferson Airplane. That's who I had a chance to meet her and Marty Ballin. And that was a wonderful afternoon.
Her and?
Marty Ballin, who was the lead vocalist. No, Marty did both, vocals and musician. So, but she was the featured singer. Eventually. So those concerts were very important. Later, the Haight Street Fair would be something that would remind you of the Summer of Love. That would go on every year, usually one day, and every merchant would be showing his wares, and you'd stroll up and down the street, and musicians would suddenly appear. It was a festive occasion, and they still do it, although COVID interrupted that. And I remember the 2019 was especially good. 2019 was there for that, and just a grand time.
And it still takes place on Haight Street.
On Haight Street, and everybody dressing, in their hippie garb, and many of them older folks who had lived that time, as well as bringing their children and their grandkids to see what Grandpa was doing in those days. So it has a kind of a very inclusive feeling to go to those fairs. A couple other things. There was a sense of promiscuity that did exist for the hippies, and this was pre-AIDS. And that's an important thing to remember, because people were having sex regularly, indiscriminately, and not having any fear of transmittable diseases. And if they caught some of the local, some of the well-known transmittable diseases, they were treatable. There wasn't a death sentence. HIV changed all that. It really cautioned people, hey, don't have sex on the first date. Get to know your person, get to know their history. You find yourself in trouble. So that's had a way of sort of dampening the passion and the feeling that of extending yourself in a loving way to a group of people. Now you were a little more guarded, and you had reason to be. You have to respect that.
Kind of like what you were saying about how all of a sudden there were bad drugs getting introduced into these kids who were hanging out, and it seems like before those two things, before the AIDS epidemic and before let's say the bad drugs, just that this was such an innocent time in a way that can never probably in that way come back, because we can't forget about these things now.
Exactly. And I think even if we tried, the world is not receptive. Initially, there was the Vietnam War, which caused so much unrest because it was an unjust war, and our boys or men were getting killed for no reason. It wasn't a sense of patriotism. It was, we were thrown into this, and we should never have gone there. So there was a groundswell throughout America and Europe too, that hey, we've got to put a stop to this. We're not going to go. We're going to burn our draft cards. We're going to show protest, and we're not going to do this.
And instead, we're going to celebrate life in this very Dionysian kind of way.
Exactly.
And not do this Spartan drone thing at all.
And we're going to take ourselves out of the city and go to a commune up in Mendocino or in Santa Cruz Mountains. There were a lot of local places that became communes for groups of people. You could drive your VW bus to Sonoma and Napa and find people having these little tiny groups of maybe 5-10 people living communally, raising their own crops, children running around absolutely free because they have no other frame of reference. They were living an idyllic life with their parents.
That's really beautiful.
Because Israel does that now, like these kibbutz.
I was just thinking about that.
This idea that this communal living, it was a social experiment.
Did you ever attend?
I've been to two when I was there. Fascinating.
When you were in Israel?
Yeah, when I was in Israel, very interesting. We can talk about that
That's
some other
yeah,
time.
sure.
Yeah,
That's
certainly.
How are we doing?
What about 9 minutes?
Okay, so we want to leave time.
So let's.
I haven't got
finish
any
up.
time.
Yeah. But this is great.
Sure. People that I did meet, again to recapture that people that I did meet. Joan Baez.
Oh wow.
Impressed me a great deal.
Why?
Judy Collins.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and I still regret this, I missed Bob Dylan by about 1 hour, and I would have loved to have Bob Dylan's encounter. One of the most meaningful people in my past. And the other one was Leonard Cohen. the great poet
what a
and
lyricist,
songwriter.
Yeah.
And there's a tribute to him that is on public television. A memorial to him. You must see it.
There's a documentary film called I'm Your Man about him. Is this a different one?
Boy.
Well, we'll look it up.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure. We can look it up. Yeah, for the sake of time.
But it's essential to understand the man and his word.
Yeah.
And incredible. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Really great. Yeah.
2 more points. Let's see. Hitchhiking. I hitchhiked all over. That was the way to go. And the slogan was gas, grass, or ass. In other words, you had to pay.
Right.
Gas, grass, or ass. And that was a bumper sticker, too.
Yeah,
a slogan of bumper.
Right. Money, drugs, or sex.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah, right.
So you hitch your ride.
As if the audience needs to be told that.
Yeah. you hitch your ride, say, a little bit away from the Golden Gate Bridge, and you wanted to go to Marin. Okay. Somebody pull over, you get in, right away it joins your face, some beer, whatever, and you're meeting new people, new friends right away, and you're all going off somewhere. It doesn't matter where you're going.
Yeah.
You know, you're just going to Marin and you get out of the city. And the cops permitted this to a point, but it got to be so excessive that people were on overpasses and underpasses. It was getting dangerous.
Yeah.
I got cited several times because I persisted. I said, no, I've got to go. I want to go to Marin, see my sister. I want to go visit friends. So that was a big part of your life.
Yeah.
Part of your day was where you hitchhiking. Well, I want to go see my friend in Stockton. Okay. And then maybe you be dropped off, and then you get another, maybe 3 or 4 rides to get to Stockton. But it was fun, and everybody would want to take you. I mean, you had no trouble getting a ride. That was the beauty. So again, that's all gone.
Could you get a ride up to Sonoma, like on one of those buses you're talking about? Could you like a long distance trip if you join a group?
You could, yeah.
Not as often.
There is one group, maybe still in the Bay Area, called the Green Tortoise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of akin to it, where you sign up and you go a bus to Mazatlan or a bus to Victoria Island. Those things still happen, and it gives you some sense of the camaraderie and the friendship and the warmth that existed. You weren't getting a ride share with a stranger who would talk to you.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, or an Uber guy. Maybe not even speaking your language, but here we had this similarity of purpose and understanding of we're going to have a good day. And let's all do our part. I'll give you a ride. You give me a joint. We'll get to our destination. So that's pretty much. I'm sure there'll be more, and I'd love to talk about it.
Sure.
But questions are important. Yeah.
So I think especially after hearing that, what I'd really like to ask you is, to what extent did you really think of yourself as part of this movement, as opposed to it's happening really during the prime of your life? You're interested in it, you're participating in it, but that's not the same thing as being part of the movement in that way.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
What would be your answer to that?
I would have liked to be part of the Diggers. The Diggers, Peter Coyote, the actor, was a digger, and they operated out of the Haight-Ashbury and the Panhandle, providing soup and sandwiches for people for free. And they were behind the scenes, self-effacing, doing their job, providing nutrition for people. And I got wind of it sort of late, and I wish now, in the retrospect, that I had been part of the Diggers. They produced literature, they produced manifestos about the hippie movement. They were sort of behind the scenes, and that would have been great. But again, I guess I was too caught up in doing what I was doing to think about, hey, who's providing the inspiration, the impetus for us? So that you answer.
Yeah.
I would love to have done.
Yeah. That's interesting. Was your artwork influenced by the hippie movement or other hippie artwork at that time?
Yes. Especially what I saw in Haight-Ashbury. People wore the most outrageous clothing, sort of a mismatch of bright colors, and again, the psychedelic colors came into the situation that were day glow, because you wanted your black light when you're stoned to reflect these bizarre, bright colors that were larger than life, super real colors.
Yeah.
And a couple of friends of mine used to wear white shirts, and they had a neon necklace, which would glow, and they would entertain when we'd have groups of people. It would be a dark room. They put the black light on, and they would dance in their white shirts, and it was really, it was kind of like, if you remember, when Dan Aykroyd and Belushi did the Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
Remember their shtick with the white shirts, the hats, and it was really an iconic kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my friends wanted to do the Blues Brothers version of it, and so they would dance to black light, and it was phenomenal to see these collars of neon with day-glow. Then I got into doing that too. I started painting under black light. And painting under black light is really where I learned, I think, the high chroma value of color. In other words, to be able to discern the red on that little book there is a chroma 9. And each color has
like that level of.
Yeah, you go up to 10 generally.
Okay.
So this is an 8. This is a 10. This is a 9.
Oh, really?
And when I paint, I think about that. I think about the intensity of the color.
Yeah.
You know, what you're wearing works out to about a 4.
Yeah.
They're subdued and they're in blend. They're monochromatic. When you have color introduced, then you have these gradations of color to intensity. To the pigment. Let's bring that pigment up. Bam! Let's go to the 10.
Yeah, because it seems like a lot of your artwork goes for that bam factor in a way that I guess now that you mention it, that's a psychedelic art thing. So do you feel like that's where that element that so characterizes so much of your work, that it comes from that, or it was really kind of, let's say, brought more to fruition during that time?
A couple of things. The hippie colors, the psychedelic colors, Picasso, Dali, who operates in brightness, Van Gogh, and Cezanne. So Paul Gauguin. These are guys who I feel were inspirational to me because of their use of color. And then finally the tribal thing that I mentioned. The kinds of garb that the people of Kenya or the Maasai warriors would wear. Their robes are scarlet red to 10.
I see.
You know, their black sticks are to 10. So generally speaking, people don't know about these kinds of considerations because they're part and parcel of the way an artist works. But I think they need to be explained better.
Well, it's very interesting to hear you explain it, because I haven't heard people talk about that aspect of it. So I suppose you're right, because it's the same thing with music for me. There's so many considerations that are really important to me that I just think are not part of someone's vocabulary.
Sure.
So it would seem like almost counterproductive to try to explain them.
Unless they were a budding musician themselves and wanted to learn your terminology to enhance their music. Elizabeth, you had questions? Do we have time?
Well, we're at about 18 minutes. Good to know. Let's take a little pause.